Long as most of us can remember, Nike has been, well, Nike, the undisputed king, right? The swoosh is just everywhere. But, behind the curtain, something's been happening. A really worrying truth is starting to bubble up, and it looks like the brand's foundation, it might actually be cracking.
Wow. I mean, this quote from a customer it hits the nail right on the head, doesn't it? That's a sentiment you're seeing everywhere now. Social media, forums, you name it. It perfectly captures this huge shift in how people feel and really sets the stage for what we're going to dig into.
So that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How does a brand that was literally built on performance and inspiration end up in this spot? We're going to peel back the layers and see if we can figure this out together. All right, so first up, an empire is cracking. Let's start by looking at some of the first visible signs that something was wrong. Okay, so comparing Nike to Cracker Barrel? I know, it sounds a little random at first, but stick with me, because the parallel is actually pretty startling. Both of these huge companies saw their most loyal customers just vanish, seemingly overnight, and their market value went right along with them. It's a scary reminder of how fast even the most loved brands can totally lose their footing. Okay, on to part 2, the peak of performance. Look, to really get why this decline is so shocking, we've got to go back. We need to rewind to Nike's golden age. What was it that made them so untouchable?
See, the thing is, Nike was never just selling shoes. They were selling a social symbol. Think about it, like how a big, shiny Cadillac in the 50s screamed, "I've made it." A pair of Nikes meant something too. It represented this American dream of performance, of grit, of self-reliance. It was literally an identity you could just put on.
And their winning formula was built on these 3 massive pillars. First, you had groundbreaking innovation that was always pushing athletes to be better. Second, incredible, powerful storytelling that inspired millions of us. And third, maybe the most important part, this deep, deep trust that when you bought a Nike product, you were buying the absolute best. That was the promise, plain and simple.
So next up, the silent rot begins. Because that promise we just talked about, it started to come apart at the seams. And it didn't happen overnight with a big bang. No, this was quiet. It was a series of internal corporate decisions, a kind of silent rot that started on the inside long before any of us on the outside had a clue. And this right here, this is the absolute heart of the matter. The whole culture shifted. It went from true innovation, being led by designers who lived and breathed the product, to something analysts are calling Excel spreadsheet thinking. The focus literally flipped from building a soul for the brand to just optimizing costs, from making the best thing possible to just making the next quarterly report look good. A huge change. Well, with this new focus, the brand started to dilute itself. They were trying to be everything to everyone, covering every single market segment. And in the process, they lost what made them special in the first place. It's a lot like what happened with Craftsman tools, remember that? They started offshoring, seeking cost cuts by using cheaper materials, and it fundamentally changed the product people knew and loved.
And where does that lead? Well, it leads right here, to that classic, kind of heartbreaking thing you hear people say, they just don't make them like they used to. You hear that phrase whenever a great brand breaks its promise of quality. And lately, you're hearing it about Nike. A lot.
All right, section 4, a crisis of confidence. Because all those behind-the-scenes changes, well, they couldn't stay behind the scenes forever. They inevitably boiled over into a very public backlash. And that trust, the very thing that defined the brand, it started to erode. And man, did it happen fast.
This quote from social media, it's just so telling. Beautiful-looking items that are weak on the inside. People felt like they were getting played, Buying products that looked the part, but just fell apart under real-world use. That legendary Nike durability, it was just gone. Replaced by something that felt totally hollow. And if you look at the numbers, they tell a pretty cold, hard story. The price you pay for Nike gear, it's been going up and up. But what people feel they're getting, the quality, that's been going down. So what happens when price goes up and quality goes down? You guessed it, trust just plummets. It is literally the textbook recipe for pushing away your most loyal fans. This really breaks what you could call a social contract between a brand and its customers. It's that unspoken deal, right? If I'm paying a premium price, I expect a premium product. But by jacking up prices while letting quality slide, Nike just shattered that trust. And they did it especially to the working-class customers who were their rock, their loyal base for decades. Which brings us to our final section, the King's Crossroads. Because this is where we are now, in a really dangerous new era for Nike. The company is standing at a historic crossroads, and they're facing a competitive landscape that is more brutal than anything they've ever seen before.
So while Nike was busy milking its own legacy, this whole new generation of hungry challengers popped up. And these new brands, they aren't winning because they're bigger. They're winning on things like soul, authenticity, and forging a real emotional connection with their customers. And in this new world, Nike is starting to look to a lot of people like just another label. It's leaving them stuck in this super dangerous middle ground. They're not the cheapest option, but they're not the undisputed best anymore either.
Yeah, this really puts the stakes into perspective. I mean, history is just littered with the ghosts of retail giants who couldn't adapt. Sears, Kmart, JCPenney, they all ended up as nostalgic relics. And seeing that question mark next to Nike's name, that should be a massive warning sign. So that's really the ultimate question we're left with, isn't it? Can Nike actually pull off a comeback? Can they go back to those core values of innovation and trust that made them so great in the first place? Or has the soul of the company, that incredible spirit of performance, has it just moved on for good to other brands? It's a question, honestly, that only Nike's next moves can answer.